Today I'm going to read you a bit of a story. It's from a book called George's Marvellous Medicine, but I'm reading it from the Roald Dahl Treasury. Let's go. George sat himself down at the table in the kitchen. He was shaking a little. Oh, how he hated Grandma. He really hated that horrid old witchy woman. And all of a sudden, he had a tremendous urge to do something about her. Something whopping. Something absolutely terrific. A real shocker. A sort of explosion. He wanted to blow away the witchy smell that hung around her in the next room. He may have only been 8 years old, but he was a brave little boy. He was ready to take on this old woman. I'm not going to be frightened by her, he said softly to himself. But he was frightened, and that's why he wanted suddenly to explode her away. Well, not quite away, but he did want to shake the old woman up a bit. Very well then, what should it be, this whopping, terrific, exploding shocker for Grandma? He would have liked to put a firework banger under her chair, but he didn't have one. He would have liked to put a long green snake down the back of her dress, but he didn't have a long green snake. He would have liked to put 6 black rats in the room with her and lock the door, but he didn't have 6 black rats. As George sat there pondering this interesting problem, his eye fell upon the bottle of Grandma's brown medicine standing on the sideboard. Rotten stuff it seemed to be. 4 times a day, a large spoonful of it was shovelled into her mouth, and it didn't do her the slightest bit of good. She was always just as horrid after she'd had it as she'd been before. The whole point of medicine, surely, was to make a person better. If it didn't do that, then it was quite useless. So, thought George suddenly. Aha! Ho-hum! I know exactly what I'll do. I shall make her a new medicine, one that is so strong and so fierce and so fantastic, it will either cure her completely or blow off the top of her head. I'll make her a magic medicine, a medicine no doctor in the world has ever made before. George looked at the kitchen clock. It said 10:05. There was nearly an hour left before Grandma's next dose was due at 11. Here we go then, cried George, jumping up from the table. A magic medicine it shall be. So give me a bug and a jumping flea, give me 2 snails and lizards 3, a slimy squiggler from the sea, and the poisonous sting of a bumblebee, and in the juice from the fruit of the jujube tree, and powdered bone of a wombat's knee, and 100 other things as well, each with a rather nasty smell. I'll stir 'em up, I'll boil them long, a mixture tough, a mixture strong, and then hey-ho, and down it goes, a nice big spoonful, hold your nose. Just gulp it down and have no fear. How'd you like it, Granny dear? Will she go pop? Will she explode? Will she go flying down the road? Will she go poof in a puff of smoke? Start fizzing like a can of Coke? Who knows? Not I. Let's wait and see. I'm glad it's neither you nor me. Oh, Grandma, if you only knew what I have got in store for you. George took an enormous saucepan out of the cupboard and placed it on the kitchen table. George, came the shrill voice from the next room. What are you doing? Nothing, Grandma, he called out. You needn't think I can't hear you just because you closed the door. You're rattling the saucepans. I'm just tidying the kitchen, Grandma. Then there was silence. George had absolutely no doubts whatsoever about how he was going to make his famous medicine. He wasn't going to fool about wondering whether to put a little bit of this or a little bit of that in. Quite simply, he knew he was going to put in everything he could find. There would be no messing about, no hesitating, no wondering whether a particular thing would knock the old girl sideways or not. The rule would be this: whatever he saw, if it was runny or powdery or gooey, it went in. Nobody had ever made a medicine like that before. If it didn't actually cure Grandma, then it would anyway cause some exciting results. It would be very worth watching. George decided to work his way around various rooms one at a time and see what they had to offer. He would go first to the bathroom. There were always lots of funny things in a bathroom. So upstairs he went, carrying the enormous 2-handled saucepan before him. In the bathroom, he gazed longingly at the famous and dreaded medicine cupboard, but he didn't go near it. It was the only thing in the entire house he was forbidden to touch. He had made a solemn promise to his parents about this, and he wasn't about to break it. There were things in there, they told him, that could actually kill a person, and although he was about to give Grandma a pretty fiery mouthful, he didn't really want a dead body on his hands. George put the saucepan on the floor and went to work. Number 1 was a bottle labelled Golden Gloss Hair Shampoo. He emptied it into the pan. That ought to wash her tummy nice and clean, he said. He took a full tube of toothpaste and squeezed the whole lot in one long worm. Maybe that'll brighten up those horrid brown teeth of hers, he said. There was an aerosol can of superfoam shaving soap belonging to his father. George loved playing with aerosols. He pressed the button and kept his finger on it until there was nothing left. A wonderful mountain of white foam built up in the giant saucepan. With his fingers, he scooped out the contents of a jar, vitamin-enriched face cream. In went a small bottle of scarlet nail varnish. If the toothpaste doesn't clean her teeth, George said, then this will paint them as red as roses. He found another jar of creamy stuff labelled hair remover. Smear it on your legs, it said, and allow to remain for 5 minutes. George tipped it all into the saucepan. There was a bottle with yellow stuff inside it called Dishworth's Famous Dandruff Cure. In it went. There was something called Brilliant for cleaning false teeth. It was a white powder. In that went too. He found another aerosol can. Nevermore Pogging deodorant spray, guaranteed, it said, to keep away unpleasant body smells for a whole day. She could use plenty of that, George said as he sprayed an entire canful into the saucepan. Liquid paraffin, the next one was called. It was a big bottle. He hadn't the faintest idea what it did to you, but he poured it in anyway. That, he thought looking around him, was about all from the bathroom. "What's that medicine of mine, boy?" came the voice from the living room. "You're forgetting me. You're doing it on purpose. I shall tell your mother." "I'm not forgetting you, Grandma," George called back. "I'm thinking of you all the time, but there are still 10 minutes to go." "You're a nasty little maggot," the voice screeched back. "You're a lazy and disobedient little worm, and you're growing too fast." George fetched the bottle of Grandma's real medicine from the side cupboard. He took out the cork and tipped it all down the sink. He then filled the bottle with his own magic mixture by dipping a small jug into the saucepan and using it as a pourer. He replaced the cork. Had it cooled down enough yet? Not quite. He held the bottle under the cold tap for a couple of minutes. The label came off in the wet, but that didn't really matter. He dried the bottle with a dishcloth. All was now ready. This was it. The great moment had arrived. "Medicine time, Grandma," he called out. "I should hope so too," came the grumpy reply. The silver tablespoon in which the medicine was always given lay ready on the kitchen sideboard. George picked it up. Holding the spoon in one hand and the bottle in the other, he advanced into the living room. George's medicine had a really dramatic effect on Grandma. She jumps to her feet and she begins to grow and grow. George stood in the farmyard looking up at the roof. The old farmhouse had a fine roof of pale red tiles and tall chimneys. There was no sign of Grandma. There was only a song thrush sitting on one of the chimney pots singing a song. The old Wurzels got stuck in the attic, George thought. Thank goodness for that. Suddenly, a tile came clattering down from the roof and fell into the yard. The song thrush took off fast and flew away. Then another tile came down, then half a dozen more. And then very slowly, like some weird monster rising from the deep, Grandma's head came through the roof, and then her scrawny neck and the tops of her shoulders. "How am I doing, boy?" she shouted. "How's that for a mash-up?" "Don't you think you'd better stop now, Grandma?" George called out. "I have stopped," she answered. "I feel terrific. Didn't I tell you I had magic powers? Didn't I warn you of my wizardry and the tip of my fingers? But you wouldn't listen to me, would you? You wouldn't listen to your old Grandma." "You didn't do it, Grandma," George shouted back to her. "I did it. I made you a new medicine." "A new medicine? You? rubbish, she yelled. I did, George shouted. You're lying as usual, Grandma yelled. You're always lying. I'm not lying, Grandma. I swear I'm not. The wrinkled old face high up on the roof stared down suspiciously at George. Are you telling me you actually made a new medicine all by yourself? She shouted. Yes, Grandma, all by myself. I don't believe you, she answered, but I'm very comfortable up here. Fetch me a cup of tea. A brown hen was pecking about in the yard close to where George was standing. The hen gave him an idea. Quickly, he uncorked the medicine bottle and poured some of the brown stuff into the spoon. Watch this, Grandma, he shouted. He crouched down, holding out the spoon to the hen. Chicken, he said. Chick, 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 chicken. Come here. Have some of this. Chickens are stupid birds and very greedy. They think everything is food. This one thought the spoon was full of corn. It hopped over, it put its head on one side and looked at the spoon. Come on, chicken, George said. Good chicken. Chick, chick, chick. The brown hen stretched out its neck towards the spoon and went peck. It got a beak full of medicine. The effect was electric. Owie! Shrieked the hen, and it shot straight up into the air like a rocket. It went as high as the house. Then down it came into the yard. Splosh! And there it sat, with its feathers all sticking straight out of its body. There was a look of amazement on its silly face. George stood watching it. Grandma was up on the roof watching it too. The hen got to its feet. It was rather shaky. It was making funny gurgling noises in its throat. Its beak was opening and shutting. It seemed like a pretty sick hen. You've done it, you stupid boy, Grandma shouted. That hen's going to die. Your father will be after you now. He'll give you socks and serve you right. All of a sudden, black smoke started pouring out of the hen's beak. It's on fire, Grandma yelled. The hen's on fire! George ran to the water trough to get a bucket of water. That hen will be roasted and ready for eating any moment, Grandma shouted. George sloshed the bucket of water over the hen. There was a sizzling sound and the smoke went away. Old hen's laid its last egg, Grandma shouted. Hens don't do any laying after they've been on fire. Now that the fire was out, the hen seemed better. It stood up properly. It flapped its wings. Then it crouched right down low to the ground as though getting ready to jump. It jumped high in the air, turned a complete somersault, and landed back on its feet. It's a circus hen, Grandma shouted from the rooftop. It's a flippin' acrobat. Now the hen began to grow. George had been waiting for this to happen. It's growing, he yelled. It's growing, Grandma. Look, it's growing. Bigger and bigger, taller and taller it grew. Soon the hen was 4 or 5 times its normal size. Can you see it, Grandma? George shouted. I can see it, boy, the old girl shouted back. I'm watching it. George was hopping about from one foot to the other with excitement, pointing at the enormous hen and shouting, It's had the magic medicine, Grandma, and it's growing just like you did. But there was a difference between the way the hen was growing and the way Grandma grew. When Grandma grew taller and taller, she got thinner and thinner. The hen didn't. It stayed nice and plump all along. Soon it was taller than George, but it didn't stop there. It went right on growing until it was about as big as a horse. Then it stopped. Doesn't it look marvellous, Grandma? George shouted. It's not as tall as me, Grandma sang out. Compared with me, that hen is titchy small. I am the tallest of them all. And that is the end of our extract from George's Marvellous Medicine. I hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.